to my channel. I just want to show you some knitting I've done. This is a little butterfly that I made, that I did today. I'm still practicing, obviously, so it's not going to be like really perfect yet, but I'm pleased with this because I feel it does look nice, and I've got the hang of the increase and decrease. Took me a little while to get the hang of the increase, but I can do it now, as you can see. Yeah, very pleased with that. Just practicing it now. I'm going to make some more of these in different colours, and also these will be adorned with buttons and some little felt. So I'll show you when I've completed it, because I'm going to put some felt down there and some pretty buttons I'm going to sew onto it. Yeah, I'm pleased with it. So I'm going to get some nice pretty buttons from Hobbycraft, obviously online. Everything's online for me at the moment, next week, so that I can put some nice little buttons on there. So in this video I wanted to carry on kind of talking about what was going on about last time, which is what my psychologist said to me recently in a session, which got me thinking when she was talking about asking me what autism has given me, sort of thing. And what she said was, I think I've already told you in another video precisely what she said, but I just thought I'd go over it again. What she said was that in childhood, she said, we tend to think more in terms of diagnosis, disorder, deficit and difficulties, whereas in adulthood, she said, we tend to think along more in a more sort of positive way about strengths, and then she said that autism and neurodiversity, and she said how we're all on this neurodiversity spectrum, and she said that we all sit on this neurodiversity spectrum, and she said that autism isn't she said and it's not better or worse. She said just different, like all the different ways of seeing the world are not better or worse, just different, sort of thing. And this made me feel I disagree with this argument 100%. And it was almost like a sort of a sort of preconceived bias that she obviously had in her head, where she'd already made up her mind about how to see autism, and she was sort of assuming that me as an autistic person would be agreeing with her, and of course I don't agree with her. So I said, actually autism is a disorder and I'd rather not have it. I said, obviously I do like my synesthesia, but synesthesia obviously is, obviously people experience synesthesia in different ways, but most people by and large tend to like having their synesthesia, because synesthesia doesn't usually cause disability in someone's life. For some people it can, depending on the type of synesthesia, obviously, because some people with synesthesia, it can be very kind of overwhelming, and sometimes I do experience my synesthesia a little bit like that, but most of the time my synesthesia I'm happy with it. Like, it's, it actually helps me a lot with my memory. It helps me see things quite clearly. It helps me, it gives me nice pictures in my head. I just like it. The synesthesia is obviously very different to autism, because it's not, by and large, it's not a disability for most people, whereas autism is. So I said that, I'd rather not be autistic, but I accept having it, because, there's nothing I could do about it, sort of thing, so just accept it. And then she said, well, maybe we need to think more in a double-edged sort of way about not just, she understood, obviously, that autism does give me difficulties, but she said that maybe we need to look at it in a more sort of double-edged way, and also think about what autism has given me, and then she's listed all the things that she thought autism had given me, and said they were sort of like gifts that autism has given me, and I was like thinking, oh, they really? Aren't they just part of who I am as a person? And that was how I was thinking also, which I did kind of touch on in my other video, about how while autism is very much a major part of my identity, and while you know, the category autism, if you like, does envelope me, it shapes me because it's pervasive. On the other hand, or on the same hand, if you want to look at it that way, it's kind of a very Western thing to think in terms of binaries. You could say, on the same hand, autism doesn't define me either. I do feel we often have a difficulty in the Western world with understanding nuance and how two things can be true at the same time. So while autism is very much a part of my identity, a major part of my identity, and shapes every aspect of my life, it also does not define me, and those two things don't have to be contradictions. They can both exist. They can both be true at the same time. My existence my existence is both shaped by the category of autism, but it's also outside of the category of autism because I'm also a human being and I'm multifaceted, and autism is just one of many aspects of my identity. It's like a kind of tapestry of different things, and ultimately what's more than a sum of all of those parts is my existence as a subject, as an I, which ultimately is shaped by all of those aspects, but at the same time is outside of those aspects. So my creativity is outside of the autism. The autism may well kind of like influence aspects of it in terms of like the way I think, but ultimately my creativity is something that is determined by me, outside of the category of autism, and I do not like it when people reduce everything to autism as though autism is a monolith and as if that's the only thing that is me, because it's not. And as I said, I also exist outside of all of those categories. And that's what I was talking about last time when I was talking about facticity and the interaction between existence and the things that we bring into the world that we can't change, and the interaction between our agency and what comes into the world that we can't change. That's what I was talking about last week. Well, not last week, a couple of days ago, in fact. But yeah, I do find it I don't like this idea that everything that we have to think now in terms of everything is just different, not better or worse, just different sort of thing. Because actually I do think it is better to be non-autistic, and I'm entitled to think that. But again, that doesn't mean I don't accept my autism either. I'm sort of recapitulating some of the points I made in my earlier video, by the way, but I just thought it's good to kind of just go over it again. What was I going to say? My brain's gone dead. Yeah, let's face it, some things are intrinsically better. This whole idea that everything has to be levelled to a sort of, what's the word? Yeah, levelled. So there's no kind of preference, if you like. Everything's just in the same ballpark. It's a very postmodern part of life, which I really, really do not like. It's similar to the argument that class does not exist, that we live in a classless society, which some right-wing politicians like to say, or certain people with lots of money like to claim that we live in a classless society. It's a similar argument to saying that being gay or homosexual is not a thing because we're all on the gay spectrum. I don't think anyone says that. I'm just saying that it would be as absurd as if someone did say that. I could say we're all on the mobility spectrum to someone who's like physically disabled and and literally cannot walk. Can you imagine how offensive that would be if I said to them, we're all on the mobility spectrum, it's not better or worse, just different? And they might be thinking, yeah, but I'd sure rather be able to walk if I could. I wouldn't say that to them. That would be very offensive of me and rude. It'd be quite right to be offended, but I wouldn't say it to them anyway because it is rude and offensive, and it wouldn't even cross my mind to say something as rude as that. some things are better. Like, it's better to be able to walk than not to be able to walk. Let's not beat around the bush. I'm glad I can walk. I'm glad I wasn't born without any legs. Some people are born without any legs. It does, they just have to accept that because that's what life has given them. That's their facticity. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be down about that. Some of them might be, and that's fine as well. But it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be down about that just because they can't walk. But they probably sure wish they could walk, and it would be so rude of someone with legs and with that privilege to try and tell them, oh, pat them on the head, don't worry, let's think about what your not being able to walk has given you in life. What advantages has you not being able to walk given you in life? What positives? Let's think about things in a more double-edged way, shall we? It's not better or worse, it's just different, isn't it? Could you imagine if someone said that to someone who couldn't walk and how rude that would be? Would someone say that? Here's a question for you. Do you think someone would say that to someone who was born without legs? Do you think they would? I'll ask that question because I'll be interested to see what you might say in the comments. But yeah, quite frankly, we're not all on a neurodiversity spectrum. The neurodivergent spectrum. Yes, all of our brains are different because we're human beings, and therefore, by default, we're all on the human spectrum. No two brains are alike. That's kind of just common sense. We're all shaped by our experiences. We all have different genes. Our brains are going to be different. No two brains are alike. That's impossible. But we're not all on the neurodivergent spectrum because to be neurodivergent means that your brain is so different to the norm that you actually have a diagnosis of something. It's like your brain is actually deviated from the kind of normal variation that exists in humanity. So your brain is actually so different that it's outside of the average, and that's why you have difficulties, and that's why you get a diagnosis. In autism, it's because essentially you're handicapped in the social domain, primarily. And obviously it comes with a host of other difficulties as well, but the central difficulty is finding it really hard to relate to people and really struggling because of that. Sorry, my brain's gone. Yeah, so basically you are, in that respect, you're neurodivergent, and someone else could have other conditions that could also make someone neurodivergent. You could have an intellectual disability, what in the UK we call learning disabilities, in America call intellectual because they use different language. That's another type of neurodivergency. There are loads of different types, ADHD, dyspraxia, and so on and so on. So no, we're not all on the neurodivergent spectrum, we're all on the human spectrum. I could say we're all on the mobility spectrum, which on some levels carries truth. Some people can't walk at all, some people can walk but very slowly, some people can walk well but not great or not bad, some people can run marathons. Ultimately we're all going to get slow in old age, so you could talk about a mobility spectrum, and you could go up to someone who can't walk and he's in a wheelchair, just using as an extreme example, and say, oh, we're all on a mobility spectrum, this is a spectrum we're all on, we all have different variations in our mobility, it's not better or worse, just different. And they'll be like, yeah, says you who can walk, thank you very much, I'd much rather be able to walk with 2 legs. That would be downright rude, wouldn't it? And by the way, it doesn't mean they're depressed either. They may well wish that, but if you're born without any legs, most of the time, I think you just accept that because you wouldn't know any different. I'm really glad I've got 2 legs, and I'm really glad I wasn't born without legs. But probably if I was born that way, I'd just have to get on with it and just accept it. And then, have you noticed this? I don't know if you noticed this, but a lot of non-disabled people take that as some form of inspiration porn. Because they cannot believe how someone born with a disability could just accept their disability. Because to them it's tragic. So they look, and that's the other extreme, by the way, when they look at it as a tragedy. This is a trope that often non-disabled people employ, which is really stigmatising and dehumanising. They basically, because they cannot fathom that someone born with a disability could just get on with life without being depressed and just accept it, they immediately kind of think, oh, this person's a hero. Look at them. They should be depressed, shouldn't they? But look, they seem so happy. and then they like they're not like actually any more happy than a normal person. It's just like a non-disabled person kind of cannot believe, you know, that someone born with a disability can be just get on with life, you know, without kind of like I don't know what they expect. So I guess it's amazing inspiration porn for them. Look how amazing it is, you know. Yeah, and then, but then, if a disabled person has the temerity, the insolence even, to say actually I wish I could have what you've got. My life would be so much easier if I didn't have this handicap. Then that's almost insulting to a non-disabled person because they no longer have that inspiration porn. As long as the non-disabled person looks happy, then it's like, oh my gosh, look how well they're coping, I can't believe it. Like as though it's some kind of extra special hero or something, failing to, basically which is dehumanising, and if they were in the same situation, they just get on with it as well. That's a fact, that's just, you know, part of being human. If we're born with something, we tend to just get on with it most of the time. They would too, you know, it doesn't make, a disabled person is not special at all, you know, in that regard. But like I say, it does provide inspiration porn when the disabled person doesn't complain. Basically, they like it when the disabled person doesn't complain. It makes them feel good about themselves. It says, all right's with the world, everything's all right with the world. Look, there are people who are disabled, but they're not even complaining. All's right with the world, you know. But as soon as the disabled person has the insolence to say that their condition is a disorder and that they'd rather not have it, then all's not well with the world anymore. Some sin has been committed. And the non-disabled person sort of feels the need to correct them because then it becomes a problem and they start to feel uncomfortable. I think it makes it feel uncomfortable because the disabled person is not allowed to be miserable or to express some, what's the word, some, I don't know, oh, I wish I wasn't disabled sort of thing. The disabled person is not allowed to express any form of misery. I mean, God forbid if a disabled person literally said that their condition was awful and that it was making them feel bad. Heaven forbid, if a disabled person said that, that would be the absolute extremity of sin committed there. But if a disabled person merely says that they wish they were, they wish they didn't have their disability or whatever, and that they wish they could have what a non-disabled person had, then, and they might not necessarily be miserable, it might just be something that they wish, but then the non-disabled person immediately assumes that they are being miserable, even if they're not. So even if they're not being miserable, it's still as if they've committed the sin of misery, because the non-disabled person cannot comprehend that it's possible to wish you have something and yet still accept your condition, because they don't get the nuance, basically. Okay, I'm going to move over to video number 2 now, so to carry on this, so move over to video number 2.